All right. The goal today is pretty simple. Help you submit disbursement requests that can move through review and payment as smoothly as possible. Quick payment is a win for everyone, helps your community, gets contractors paid, helps OPWC keep projects moving. For some context, OPWC disperses on average about $28.6 million each month to communities and vendors. That volume, a clean, easy to read request really makes a difference. A request that's clear, complete, easy to follow, and easier for us to review and faster to move through towards payment. We're pretty flexible when it comes to unusual situations. The important thing there is to just reach out and stay in communication so we can work through any issues that arise. Before we get into the process, I want to get a quick sense of who is in the room with us today. Uh, we are going to do a quick poll here. Choose one if you're brand new and have never submitted an OPWC disbursement, two if you've submitted one or two, or three if you've submitted many and consider yourself a veteran. Give it a few seconds here. Cool. Looks like we have a pretty even mix here. So we'll cover the basics, but be sure to keep an eye out for any of the new requirements or common issues that we encounter. Here's the path we're going to be following today. So we're going to follow the same general sequence you would use on a real request. First, prepare, make sure the project officials, vendor setup, ratio, timing, and other documents are ready. Then document, gather the invoices and whatever other records apply, then submit. Enter the request in WorksWise and upload the documents under the right submission types. After that, we'll talk about how OPWC reviews the request, the math, eligibility, scope, and payment instructions, and how finally to resolve a return request if we need clarification or correction. And then after slide 8, I'll turn it over to Will for a live WorksWise walkthrough. So let's start with a basic question. What is a disbursement request? A disbursement request is the WorksWise record that allows OPWC funds to be paid for eligible project costs. Most requests fall into one of three situations. With direct pay, OPWC pays an approved vendor directly for an unpaid invoice. Reimbursement, your community has already paid an eligible project cost, and OPWC reimburses the community at your project ratio. Because the payment has already happened, we will need proof of payment for those. With in-kind and force account, the recipient is contributing eligible labor, equipment, or materials, and those costs have to be supported by detailed records. No matter which type you're submitting, we're trying to follow the same story. What is the cost? Is it eligible? Who should be paid? And how is it being financed? If the request makes that story easy to follow, review goes much smoother. Most avoidable delays can be prevented before you even start the request. Before opening a new disbursement, take a minute to ensure the basics are ready to go. The project should be approved and available for disbursements. The CEO and CFO and WorksWise should be current and two distinct individuals because we compare those project officials to the signatures on the disbursement signature page, and those must match. For direct payment, make sure the vendor is ready in the state payment system and that you have the correct remit to information, know the OPWC and local contribution ratio for the project, and have the invoices and any reimbursement, resolution of intent, in-kind, or change order docs ready as clear PDFs. If something doesn't look right, perhaps an official change, the vendor setup is unclear, the ratio is unusual, or you're not sure what documentation you need, just contact your program rep before you submit. A short conversation up front can save some headache later. Take a beat here. Once you start the request, the first major system check is the financial details section. You want to think of that as a balance sheet. It's not only asking how much OPWC should pay, it's accounting for the full cost in the request and how that cost is being financed. Total all invoices is the cumulative costs included in the request. Total financing is how those costs are being paid, meaning OPWC, local share, and any other resources. Expenditure total is the total project cost being submitted in this draw. So these three numbers right here must match. If the invoices total $100,000 on a 60% OPWC, 40% local project, the financing might show $60,000 OPWC and $40,000 in local share. The expenditure total should always be that $100,000. If the three totals don't match, WorksWise will not allow this request to be submitted. And the next slide is the same concept on an actual WorksWise financial details page. This might look daunting at first, so we'll sort of start at the top. This example has two OPWC project IDs. CM11AC is the grant ID, and CM12AC is the loan ID. Under financing progress, you will see those again as CM11AC-0 and CM12AC-0. The -0 is just the WorksWise funding source line tied to that project ID. You can think of it as the specific pot of money that the system is tracking, separate from the overall project page, which is linked as the CM11AC / CM12AC. Now, if you look across the four columns, you'll see as per agreement, that's the approved amount in the project agreement. That's the funding that was put in as the budget when you applied. Paid prior to this draw is what has already been paid before the request. And as part of this draw is the activity in the disbursement you'd be working on now. And the paid to date is the cumulative total after this draw is included. The same logic applies in financing progress. Under as per agreement, you can see the approved OPWC funding split between the grant and the loan. Under paid prior to this draw, you can see how much has already been charged to each funding source. Under as part of this draw, you can see how this request is drawing down those funds as well. In this example, the grant still has funds available, so the current OPWC draw is being applied to the grant and nothing is being charged to the loan yet. You'll enter the OPWC amount for the request, and WorksWise will automatically allocate those amounts across the OPWC funding sources, drawing the grant first before moving to the loan. At the bottom, the payee section shows the invoice total, the OPWC amount, and the local amount. Those amounts feed back into the same balance we just discussed. And so the main takeaway here, you don't need to memorize every row, just want to learn the columns, know what ID is the grant, what's the loan, and make sure the current draw and the totals tell the same story.
Hey, Nick, it's Abby. Hi, everyone. This is Abby Dehart. I'm the director of OPWC. Yes, Janet, I saw your question regarding slides being available. We are recording this and they will be available afterwards. And additionally, Will be jumping in here soon to kind of walk you through the basics of a disbursement request. So we will get to that. I know it's a lot of information, so just bear with us, but we're happy to answer questions along the way.
Yep, and just a reminder, put your questions in the chat and we'll try to get to them as quickly as possible. All right. Once the financial side is balanced, WorksWise also checks whether the required documents were uploaded correctly. Uploading the file is only half the step. WorksWise uses the submission type feature to recognize what document you've provided. At minimum, the request needs an itemized invoice uploaded under the invoice submission type and a completed disbursement signature page uploaded separately under the disbursement signature page submission type. Don't combine those two required documents into one PDF. A clear file name helps us review the packet, but a file named invoice.pdf doesn't satisfy the system requirement if the wrong submission type is selected. If the project has an OPWC loan and will seek reimbursement is selected on the first disbursement, WorksWise will also require the resolution of intent. So the two system ideas to remember here, general, are the financial details have to balance, and WorksWise has to recognize the required uploads. It won't allow submittal if those two requirements are not met. At this point, I will turn it over to Will so you can see those steps live in action.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Will Gabriel. I'm one of the program representatives here along with Nick. And we're going to be going over looking at the OPWC disbursement process. So when you log into WorksWise, there are a couple ways that you can access your project to begin your disbursement request. You can go up here next to where your name would be sitting and put in the first portion of your project ID and hit search there. Or if you see it listed down below here, you can also select that and it will take you to your project page. Looking at your project here, first of all, you can see your full project ID listed right over here in the application ID and your project name. Therefore, you make sure you have the right project. If you have multiple OPWC projects, always a good thing to start off on that. When you're ready to submit your request, you will come up here to the Request Disbursement button and click on that. And this is going to generate a new page for you. And here is where you would be entering in the numbers. As you can see on this particular disbursement request, this is going to be the first time a disbursement has been issued. There's no prior draws on this. And as we look here, we can see that there is the full amount of funding for this particular project remaining on it. Anytime you make a disbursement request and it is processed, this number will change and be reduced by the prior amount that you had asked for. Just below that, if your project has a loan component, you will see a selection here where you need to choose whether you're going to seek reimbursement or will not seek reimbursement. It is OPWC's recommendation that you select will seek reimbursement. This means that at the end of the project, when you're into the loan portion, if there are parts of it that you need to reconcile, you will still have that option at that point. However, if you have selected will not seek reimbursement and you get a loan and you need to be reimbursed on something, we are not able to do so. So it's always the best to go ahead and select will seek reimbursement. And that option again gives you more flexibility. If you don't actually end up getting reimbursed, it will not be counted against you. But again, it does offer that flexibility for you. If this is your final disbursement request for the project, you'll see a little thing here that says check here if this is your final disbursement. You'll also notice as I hover over that, there is a little warning that pops up that lets you know that once this request is processed, any remaining funds will be released back to the district. So do be very wary when you click on that final disbursement and make sure that it is your final. You'll also see here a line that talks about change orders. And by clicking that button, you indicate that there is a change order on your project and that you will need to upload documentation to verify what was done within that change order. Now, when you go to actually begin your application, your disbursement request here, you'll notice there's only one column that you can actually enter in your numbers. Everything else is auto-calculated as you begin filling it out. So in this particular case, let's say I have $50,000 worth of engineering. I would type that in and hit the tab key. Do make sure that you hit the tab key. The system does not care for it when you hit the enter key. It'll make it a little easier for you. But as you can see, when I entered in that 50,000, it automatically adjusted that number here. Now, the three different sections that we have, first, you're going to be looking at that expenditures progress. That section asks you in what category the money was spent. So was it engineering costs, construction costs, right away, that sort of thing. Our financing progress section, this asks who is contributing what amount. So if it is OPWC, when we go into the payee section and begin filling that out, it will automatically be generated up here for you. As you can see, you actually don't have the option of filling that out, but the system will help calculate that for you. However, in the lower section that deals with the local finances, you will have the ability to put that in based on how you're contributing to the project. If you are contributing revenue, if you have in-kind work, or let's say you got a ODOT grant, and here is where you would record that. And when you want us to pay people, that is the payee section here. In the payee section, when you click on the add an item, it produces a whole series of things that you would need to fill out. First is going to be your vendors. Let's say in this case, I have Cook Hosting. I would type in Kokosing, and then I would click on the search icon right here. This is going to bring up a new screen. On that are several different options. In this particular case, Kokosing has several different billing addresses. So you want to make sure that you look at your invoice from Kokosing and select their billing address, not their mailing address, but their billing address that they have set up with the state. And when I select that, fills that in for me. And then I would begin to fill in the information that is relevant to my disbursement request. If I have two pay applications from Kokosing, I would type in the word multiple. Or if I had a single one, I would type in, let's say, invoice, try to get my fingers working here, invoice 346A, that happened to be. But again, that would allow whomever is doing the review of your project or possibly an auditor to know exactly where those charges would be in the documentation that you supply. If I had $200,000 in Kokosing charges, I would type in the 200,000, hit the tab. You can see that it calculates that and brings it up. And let's say I had $50,000 in OPWC being paid for on that Kokosing invoice. I would type that in, and it will automatically deduct from the invoice total the OPWC amount and give you the local amount that you would need to take care of up here. Give you a nice quick double check at that point. Now, I already have one that is more filled out, so you can kind of see here. We selected will seek reimbursement on this one. There are no change orders on it. You'll see here we had $50,000 in our engineering and then $200,000 in our construction costs. And on this particular project, to stay on ratio, it was an 80-20 split. I had $250,000 in total charges, of which the local revenue is going to cover $50,000. And looking on this particular one, we're going to have Kokosing as our primary vendor. They have several invoices that we'll need to check. We're asking for $150,000 to be paid to Kokosing, leaving the local credit. Sorry, the local amount that they only take care of is the $50,000. And they had paid for engineering and are looking to be reimbursed for that. So you can see here, they'll have a local amount that they'll need to credit for that for 0. So they don't have to worry about that. OPWC would cover that portion there. Now, we hit save. And you'll see here, it'll take us to a new screen. And on the screen, on the left-hand side by this lightning bolt, you'll see there is a DIS number. Every disbursement request that you create will have an individualized number. It is my recommendation that you only write down your project ID, in this case, CN22AD/CN23AD. And then I would write DIS-348706, and I would probably put a number 1 after that because this is my first disbursement request. Anytime that I need to come back to this request, whether I need to edit it to fix it, or whether I need to just go ahead and check on the status of its payment, I can quickly jump to that by going up here into the search bar and putting in the disbursement signature request, rather than having to jump to the project page and then try to find a request from there. Going in here, as I have entered in this request, one of the things I'm also going to do is look in and make sure that each of these totals for each section match one another. So our expenditure total is $250,000. Our financing total is $250,000. And our payee section is $250,000. So all 3 of those match. And if that's the case and everything looks good, you're in ratio. There's no warning that's popped up here. Typically, if you're out of ratio, you'll see a red warning here, whether letting you know whether you are above the OPWC participation rate or below the OPWC participation rate. And it'll actually give you the exact percentages as far as that goes. And if you ever want to double check that, right here above your disbursement details, you can see what the agreed amount was and what your current participation is to date. I'm trying to say that 3 times fast. There we go. If you ever do need to edit that request, you can simply go up to this button up here and click on Edit Request, and that will take you right back to where you were. Now, One of the things that you will need to do when you have your disbursement is go to this drop-down arrow, and you will see that there are a couple of different downloads that would be available for you based on your project. For every single project, there is the signature page. And when you click on download signature page, you'll see that pop up here. You're going to want to download that each time. And part of the reason why is that makes sure that you have the latest version of this particular document. And for those of you that are experienced with OPWC request, you'll see here on the new version, you no longer have to have the project manager sign off. So that is one recent change that has been enacted. This is a fillable PDF to make it as easy for you as possible. And let's go back to our disbursement request there. Once you have completed that document, you'll need to upload these to your project. To do so, you go over to your invoices and files, right next to your details and below your blue lightning bolt there, and you'll click upload a file. Now, if you notice, there are 2 points here that both say upload file. Either one of those is perfectly fine. It doesn't matter which one that you decide to choose on that. So we're going to upload our disbursement signature page. Select the file, begin the process, you click next. And then you're going to be able to select what document you want this PDF to fulfill the need for. In this case, I'm going to scroll down to my disbursement signature page and click that button there. And now you'll see it has fulfilled the item for that. Now, I realize this is a lot of information to take in. Always remember that your OPWC program representatives are more than happy to set up a time to go through the process with you. If it's your first time, it's your 50th time, it doesn't really matter. We're always happy to help you with the process of creating your disbursement request. And at this point, I think there may be a question or two that I might need to answer. So I'm going to open the floor to any questions right now. If you have a question, you can place that in the chat, and I will try to address those for you. Let's see here.
Will, why don't you go ahead and address with them the engineering budget line items? There's been some questions there, along with what is eligible in the construction contingency line.
Roger that. Okay, looking at your engineering, you'll have 2 items that actually make up your what's called your total engineering. You'll have your engineering and then your construction admin line. Both of those are actually added together. And so if I had $100,000 in my engineering and $50,000 in my construction administration, I would actually have a total of $150,000 in what we call total engineering. That money can move back and forth between those two. That's entirely up to you and how you wish to spend that. However, you cannot have money from any other category flow into your engineering. The construction contingencies line item, though, a lot of times people get that confused with just a standard change order for like your project used a little bit more paving material or stabilization material than it originally had, or you needed to put down more piping than you originally had on there, but it's not anything added to the scope of the project. It is just simply changes in quantities. That is not really a construction contingency. However, let's say that you are doing your project, and as you are digging up the roadway, you find that there is a water line that was unmarked, and so that is going to cause you to have to relocate that line. That is something that can be considered a construction contingency because it is a necessity for the project. It is not originally included exactly in the project scope, but it is an unintended, unexpected cost that has come into the project. So that is where you would want to spend your construction contingency money on that. So are there any other details that you wish me to go into that? Anybody has any questions on any of those particular lines there?
We have quite a few questions in the chat here.
They keep scrolling past me as I'm looking through them here. So after picking a vendor, do you need to add address, federal tax ID, etc.? Yes, Rob, you would need to add that information. And that is information that you're going to want to procure ahead of time of doing your disbursement request. You want to actually talk to your vendor and make sure you don't necessarily need the federal tax ID, but what you really want to get is what's called their OAKS ID. It is the ID that they're provided when they register with OhioPays. And that way you can make sure that they're squared away with that ahead of time and head off any problems that you might have down the road as far as getting it processed promptly. Because if they're not set up with OhioPays, or they have not changed their data with OhioPays, that can cause problems with us getting them the money on that. Let's see, can I find, let's see, it looks like that might have been answered. Silly question, is your OPWC rep the same as your district rep? Yes, your OPWC representative typically serves multiple communities. In my case, I do District 7, District 11, District 12, District 14, and District 19. And the other districts that we have are broken up between the other representatives on there. Now, a little bit later on, there will be a slide that not only lists all of the program representatives, but it tells you what their current districts that they're managing are. If you ever have any trouble, you can always go onto our website. We will have a link later on in the presentation as well in the chat that will allow you to always stay current with whom your program representative is. And let's see here, trying to see if something causes us to exceed the original budget, can any of that be revised? Okay, your engineering and your construction administration, so basically your total engineering is pretty much capped at whatever your agreement is with us. So if you had $150,000 and you ended up with $200,000, in most cases, yes, you would be capped at the $150,000. If you have any concerns about that, you can speak to your program rep individually and a determination can be made from there. But in most cases, very rarely is it ever extended on that. However, money can all flow into construction costs. So if you did not use all of your engineering, let's say you had that $150,000 in engineering and you only utilized $50,000 of that, that difference could then be moved into your construction costs to help you take care of some of those unexpected increases that always seem to happen whenever we have a construction project. And again, that's something you can speak to your OPWC rep individually on to ensure. One of the biggest things that you can do is reach out at any point in time with your project and talk to your rep about any questions that you have. That's one of our primary purposes is to be here is to take care of you on that. Okay, is there a written step-by-step guide for this? As a first timer, I am lost and would benefit from the guide. We do have a guide, and that is something that I will be updating here very soon to make sure that it is ready to go for you on that. But yes, we do have a guide. If you will get hold of me at the end of the meeting, I will get you linked up with that. And again, if you want a one-on-one walkthrough on your disbursement request as you're putting it into the system, the whole 9 yards, any one of the reps would be more than happy to take care of you on that as well. Let's see here. I think we got everybody in for the lobby. Are there any other questions that I did not address right away?
You have a question asking if you could show where you got the disbursement signature page again.
Oh, absolutely on that. Absolutely. So looking at the top of the screen, to the far right-hand side below where your name would be are a series of buttons. There's a drop-down arrow. You would click on that and you'll see here, download signature page. This is also the same location where you can download the resolution of intent. So if your project has that loan and you need to get that resolution of intent filled out, that is where you would go to get that. Hopefully that you can see that clearly there. Is that any other questions on that I could answer? Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
There was another question, Will, from Katie about if we want digital signatures and e-sign on the disbursement signature page, or do you want the document signed with ink?
You can use either a recognized digital signature, something like from DocuSign, that sort of thing, or you can sign it by ink. But it has to be one that is recognized by the state of Ohio on that. And I forget all the recognized ones off the top of my head. It's usually something I have to go look up. But I know DocuSign is one of the big ones that people utilize. I think Adobe also has a signature-based process that stamps it with a date and time and things along those lines. Am I correct on that, Abby?
Yeah. We just can't have, like the standard like Word typed in signature, but you can use some sort of date and signed signature, which is acceptable. And that's a standard auditor practice as well.
Thank you.
You had one more question. Is the reimbursement sent via hardware or copy paper check?
The reimbursement, if you are a government entity, it is sent via a check by mail. So that's the only way to get reimbursed on that as far as government entities go. I'm not sure for nonprofits. Electronic funds transfer for nonprofits, correct?
I'd have to ask, is Ivy in here? Ivy would know.
Yes. So anybody who's not an official government entity or a title company can be paid by EFT if they have that option available in the state of Ohio payment system, also called OOCS.
Thanks, Ivy.
Excellent. So we're all
You-
learning something there.
You've got another question here about the use of contingencies, and can they use contingency funds for a bid that is over the application amount?
Contingency, if it's over the application amount, no. That would simply go into your construction. But again, if you have that contingency money and it doesn't get used on something that is an unexpected cost, that can flow into your construction. But you want to list it in the construction line. You can't list it in the construction contingencies if it's an unexpected cost for something, again, like running into an underground line, or something along those lines. Again, if you ever have a question with whatever the cost might be, get with your program rep and discuss that with them.
I think the big thing to point out here is that at the end of the day, we're looking at the overall project scope. And Nick is going to get into more of this, but when we're talking about construction costs and construction contingencies, we're looking at the original engineer's estimate submitted with the project to review how it fits with the disbursement request itself. So it's not unfortunately for the staff answering this, it's not a black and white question because it's really going to be dependent on what your original project agreement says. So that's why it's always best just to reach out to your program representative with these types of questions.
Any other questions that I can answer? You can always ask them at the end if you think of something between here and there. You don't have to, to rush your question right there. But if you have something right now, I'm more than happy to address that. Can a disbursement summary be added to the signature page, or can the same digital signature be added? Can I just add to this? You don't want to add anything to the disbursement signature page. That should be a separate upload from anything else. Your summary would be something that you would attach. Let's say you have multiple invoices from one particular vendor. You would want to attach that summary at the front end of those multiple invoices so that as the person auditing or reviewing your disbursement request would be able to see your totals and then go to each of those invoices to see if those match your summary, and gives them a little clearer picture as far as that goes. But yes, when you upload your disbursement signature page, it should only be that. And cover the contingencies, talking with the OhioPays a little bit later. And
I think we're all caught up.
all right, that seems good. Well, I am going to turn this back over to Nick. I thank you very much for your time. And Nick, go ahead and share your screen and we'll get that up there for everyone.
All right, let's do a quick check before we move on. For WorksWise will allow submittal, which statement is true? Right, yep, that's correct. The correct answer is A. The financial details have to balance and the required uploads have to be recognized by the system. A good file name doesn't replace the correct submission type. The invoice and disbursement signature page should not be combined into one PDF, and a resolution of intent is not required for every project. Now that you've seen how the system accepts a request, let's talk about what makes that request easy to follow. From the reviewer's side, a clean request is clear, complete, consistent, on ratio, and minimal. Clear means we can tell what each file is and what cost it supports. Complete means that the documents that apply to this request are actually there. Consistent means the numbers agree across WorksWise, the invoices, and the disbursement signature page. On ratio means that OPWC and local participation stay aligned. And minimal means we have what we need without duplicate or outdated documents mixed into the record. Someone reviewing the request should be able to follow the cost, the documentation, the payee, and the amount without having to reconstruct what happened. And that matters beyond the payment we're reviewing today. Imagine someone who wasn't involved in the project opens the record years from now. This could be an auditor, someone responding to a public records request, legal counsel, or even a new employee with your community. They should be able to easily understand what was paid, why it was eligible, and how that amount was supported, without having to call everyone who worked on the project. The exact documents in that packet depend on the type of cost you are requesting. So at a high level, the invoice and disbursement signature page are the two baseline documents for every request. From there, the documentation depends on the situation. A reimbursement needs proof of payment. In-kind or force account costs need the supporting records and certifications. Loan reimbursement may require the resolution of intent. A change order needs signed documentation and enough explanation for us to understand the change. All right, so let's take a look at what we mean by an itemized invoice. The itemized invoice should make it easy to answer a few basic questions. Who billed the project? What work materials were charged? When was the work billed? And most importantly, what is that total? If your invoice contains something OPWC is not participating in, don't make the reviewer guess what you're excluding. Highlight it, annotate it, or show the adjustment on a cover sheet so that the eligible amount is obvious and matches WorksWise. OPWC also cannot accept a lump sum invoice with no details since we're unable to verify those costs against the approved project. We need to be able to see the line items and how that final total is reached. The clearer the invoice is about the work and costs, the easier it is for us to confirm eligibility and get everybody paid. The other document required on every request is the disbursement signature page. The current disbursement signature page that we just rolled out here in May only requires the project CEO and CFO signatures, and those signatures need to be consistent with the project officials in WorksWise. The project manager signature is no longer required. The OPWC amount on the page needs to match the OPWC amount requested in WorksWise. The current page also asks for the estimated percentage of the project complete, so you want to make sure that is filled in. If an official has changed with your community, just contact your program representative for submitting so we can update the project record instead of returning the request because the signer doesn't match. For a simple request, the invoice may already be easy to follow. Sometimes it might just be one invoice or two. For a large request with multiple invoices, a cover sheet can save everybody a lot of time. When a request includes several invoices, several vendors, partial ineligible costs, or force account work, a simple cover sheet can make a huge difference. The cover sheet should identify what's included, the eligible amount, the OPWC amount, and anything that was removed as ineligible. The grand total at the bottom should tie directly to the request in WorksWise, and the OPWC amount on the disbursement signature page. You want to think of the cover sheet as a roadmap for your invoices. It lets the reviewers see the structure of the request before we get into reviewing a stack. We just need to see how all of those invoice totals create the final total that was entered into WorksWise. The same idea applies to individual files you'll upload. You'll just want to use file names that tell us what we're opening. For example, invoice ABC contracting number 5. Much more useful than just like scan.pdf or a long string of numbers. You can combine documents that belong together. For example, several invoices from the same vendor can often be one PDF, but keep unlike documents separate. The invoice, disbursement signature page, proof of payment, and other required document types must be identifiable and uploaded under their appropriate submission type. Also, you'll just want to upload each document once. Duplicates, revised copies from when we sent up disbursement back, and repeated signature pages make it harder to tell which version is the right one and creates extra storage over the life of the project. We just, again, remember the outside reviewer point from slide 11. We don't want to create unnecessary confusion down the line in case we have to go back and reconstruct the disbursement. So clean organization applies to the payee section 2. One request can include more than one vendor. WorksWise can include multiple payees in a single disbursement request. You might have a direct payment to vendor A, a direct payment to vendor B, and then a reimbursement to your community for something that you've paid. Each payee should generally be added once. If you have multiple invoices from the same vendor, combine these costs under one vendor or payee line when submitting, rather than creating a new vendor line for each invoice. The related invoices can be uploaded together as one organized invoice package. In most cases, you don't need a separate disbursement request for every vendor. Combining related costs gives you one cleaner requests and reduces duplicate review work. We recommend grouping these costs into regular monthly requests when you can. As a general rule of thumb, collect the related invoices and supporting documentation and submit one request about every 30 days. This keeps the project record cleaner, avoids a series of small requests that each require separate review. This is just a guideline. It's not a rigid rule. If there's a special timing issue or payment that can't wait, just contact your program rep. Our goal is always to efficiently process these things and get them out quick. We don't want to create any unnecessary delays. Now let's separate two payment situations that affect who you enter as the payee. Direct pay versus reimbursement. The easiest way to distinguish direct pay from reimbursement is to simply ask one question: who should receive this payment? For direct pay, the vendor is the payee, the contractor, because OPWC is paying an unpaid invoice directly. For reimbursement, your community is the payee because the vendor or contractor has already been paid. In that situation, we need the invoice plus proof of payment showing who was paid, how much was paid, and when. First, let's take a closer look at what counts as proof of payment. So an invoice and proof of payment serve different purposes. An invoice shows what the vendor billed. Proof of payment shows that your community actually paid it. Acceptable support can include a canceled check, online banking record, a bank statement entry, or a payment record or screenshot from your community's financial system. The exact format can vary. What matters is that we can clearly see the payee, payment amount, and payment date, and connect that payment back to that invoice. In-kind and forced account costs require a different type of supporting record. For labor, you're going to want to show who performed the work, what work was performed, the date, hours, hourly rate, fringe benefits, and how it relates to the project. We need to see that generally what we're being billed for. For materials, use actual costs and provide the invoice and proof of payment, or acceptable support for materials taken from stock. For equipment, identify the date and hours used, equipment or type of model, the rate source. We require ODOT. Those rates can be found online, and the total amount being claimed on the disbursement. All in-kind documentation must be certified or signed by the project manager. And additionally, administrative labor is not eligible. And so when we say administrative labor, we mean things like preparing an OPWC application, filling out a disbursement request, or general clerical in-office administrative costs that aren't directly associated with OPWC project work. That's different from eligible project work, such as approved in-house engineering, inspection, construction activity, construction administration, stuff like that. We'll be dropping the infrastructure project administration page in the chat. This is where you can find current in-kind and time reporting and equipment reporting documents. You don't have to use our exact form if your records contain all the required info, but the templates are a good guide. We just need to see that required info. Whether the request is direct pay, reimbursement, or in kind, the OPWC and local shares must stay aligned. So the OPWC project ratio is outlined in your agreement, and it is the approved split between OPWC funds and the local contribution. For example, if a project is 60% OPWC and 40% local share on a $100,000 eligible cost, that would generally mean $60,000 OPWC and $40,000 local will be put onto that disbursement. We want projects to stay on ratio as much as possible throughout the life of the project, but we do understand that projects encounter changes that don't always produce perfectly timed disbursements. If there's a practical reason to go off ratio temporarily, just be sure to communicate with your program rep. We can be flexible in this, but there should always be a plan to bring it back into alignment. We don't want to get into a situation where we're off by the time the project ends. The important benchmark is that a project should generally be back on ratio by 50% construction complete, and the required local contribution must be met before the final closeout. That is, we have to be on ratio by the time the project closes out. For direct payments, there's another piece outside WorksWise that has to be ready, and that is the state's vendor payment system. So WorksWise is OPWC's project management portal. OhioPays and Oaks are separate state payment systems. A request can be completely correct in WorksWise and still have the payment delayed if the vendor is not active in the state payment system or the remit to information is wrong. Everybody that gets paid through OPWC must be active in OhioPays and have an active Oaks ID. For direct pay, they must be active in OhioPays, have the correct remit to address. OPWC then uses that vendor information WorksWise for the payment request. We're dropping 3 resources in the chat: OhioPays information page, the WorksWise training materials, and the current WorksWise access and permissions help. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ivy for some comments on receiving payment.
Thanks, Nick. And welcome everybody. My name is Ivy Tem, and I am the Financial Operations Administrator here with our commission. My part of disbursements is to take the requests that are entered into WorksWise and enter them into the state of Ohio system that Nick mentioned, which is Oaks. I'm here just to go into why it matters to verify that a vendor is set up in Oaks through OhioPays prior to entering your disbursement, and also verifying that their remit to address is correct and that is what you enter when requesting payment in WorksWise. So as Nick stated, WorksWise is our portal. It does not actually set up a payment to a vendor. So when you're entering that information, that is going to be what we use to go into the Oaks system and actually process the payment, whether through check or through electronic payment. So if you do not have a current vendor with an active Oaks ID, we will not be able to request that payment in the state of Ohio system. So one thing I want to mention is, even if a vendor thinks they're active, if they have not received payment from a state of Ohio agency in over a year, you would want them to check that their account is current and active, as can be made obsolete through OBM if they're not used for a period of time. So that would be the first step, is just making sure that they're set up and that their account is current and active. The second step is to ensure that the address that you're entering on the request is the remit to address. So often vendors will have a separate company address, which is a street address where their company is located. And then they have a remit to address where they request payments be sent. And they tie that in whether it's EFT or check. So if you enter on the request a street address or a company address and not the remit to address that's listed in Oaks, we have to then come back to you and verify the address. We will not process until the address on the disbursement matches what is in the Oaks OhioPays system. So in order to avoid the delays from a vendor not having a current active OAKS account or the remit to address not matching, we just request that you verify these things with the vendors upfront. And then our goal here is to get these disbursements processed efficiently and quickly. The delays that can happen due to a vendor not being active, not having an OAKS ID, or not having a correct remit to address can be upwards of 7 to 10 business days. So we're just here to help and to try to avoid those things and get these things processed as quickly as possible for you. I am going to also drop the website to OhioPays, which is where a vendor can request a account or update their account. And I'm going to put the phone number to OBM that has the customer service that can help with that website as well if there are any issues. I'll be on this meeting until the end if you have any questions related to the finance part of the disbursements, and that's all I have for you.
All right, thanks, Ivy. The next question in our review is whether the cost fits the project, OPWC, and the district approved.
Hey, Nick, we have a hand raised.
Oh, yeah, what's up?
I think it was Steve. Did you have a question?
We check to see what the vendors.
He's asking, how do we check to see what the vendor's OhioPays is in the system, and where do we find that?
This is something that the vendor would actually have to provide, and they can look up through their account by going to that OhioPays.ohio.gov. You would not have access to their supplier profile. So that is where your communication with them up front prior to entering the request is key. So this is not something that is public information that anyone can go into the OAKS system or the supplier portal and view a vendor OAKS ID or OhioPays information that way. There is limited information in the WorksWise system, but often that is not what is in the OAKS system. So like I said, we just advise that you would communicate directly with the vendor to ask them what that address is and what their OAKS ID is.
And there was another question, Ivy. So if we have an OAKS ID, are we in OhioPays already?
If the account is current and active and what you were given when you created a profile with the state of Ohio, that OAKS ID is what is brought over from the state of Ohio system. So essentially, yes, as long as your account is current and active.
Okay, I think we're caught up on questions.
Cool. All right. So moving forward, change orders and scope. Change order, it's not typically an issue. The question is whether the cost still fits the project that was approved by the district and OPWC. When we see a change order, we're comparing it to the approved application scope, the engineer's estimate, and the project agreement. We want to understand what changed, why it changed, what work was actually performed, and how it relates to the approved project. Upload the signed change order documentation and make the reason for the change easy to follow. There can be flexibility when an unforeseen item is necessary to complete the project. That's why we'd like you to communicate with us early. If a change order may affect scope, some sort of meaningful expansion of the scope, contact your program representative. Generally, those are not permissible and require an amendment through the district in order to approve any meaningful expansion of the scope. We'll also be dropping the applicable Ohio Administrative Code references in the chat, so you have that rule language for reference. Loan projects add a few requirements of their own, so I want to hit the major reminders here. So if you have already seen WorksWise triggers the resolution of intent requirement, so I only want to leave you with the loan-specific points that are easy to miss. If a resolution of intent is required, it must be completed within 60 days of beginning construction activity. This is one that sort of flies under the radar, but can cause a huge hiccup. It's an IRS requirement, so just don't wait till the first reimbursement is ready. We always recommend getting that resolution of intent just passed immediately once the project's approved. Grant-only projects don't need an ROI. A loan project using direct pay will not seek reimbursement on their first request, and that won't require the ROI. Also, if an OPWC loan is delinquent, like a loan repayment, that will lock the community out of dispersing funds and applying for new OPWC funding. It will not let you submit. Ivy is your contact for getting those paid. We're also going to be dropping Ivy's loan training in the chat for more reference on that. And another thing that can cause a return request is outdated project officials or system access. So you want to keep the project officials and WorksWise access current. We already covered who signs the disbursement signature page. This slide is about to do what to do when someone changes and moves on or comes in. If a project official or WorksWise user changes, just email your program representative the person's full name, title, professional email, phone number, and mailing address so we can update the project record. If a consultant or contractor needs access on behalf of your community, a letter of authorization from the community will be required. That typically is signed by the mayor, CEO, whoever has that authorization. Can be a city administrator, but it has to be on official letterhead. Updating this before the next disbursement is much easier than discovering the mismatch when it's already in front of us. And before you click submit, this checklist will help ensure everything is complete. So I'm not going to read this checklist line by line. We're dropping a PDF version of it in the chat now. It'll be posted on our website, so you can keep it and use it for future submissions. You'll just want to think of it as 3 quick passes before you hit submit: disbursement signature page and math, required documentation, and payee ratio file cleanup. If those 3 items are clean, you've already caught most of the issues, and it's likely the disbursement will be paid pretty quickly. Once you submit, you can follow the request through WorksWise. Here's what the normal payment path looks like. Give it a second here. I think we're going to get that pasted in the chat.
Nick, while you're waiting, there's a question. If the CEO or CFO is temporarily out, can the acting CEO or CFO sign the disbursement request?
Yeah, that's typically fine. If it's just a one-time thing, that's usually fine. It just needs to be notated on the disbursement request. Again, we have to just be cognizant of a future reviewer and that the record is up to date. We don't want somebody looking at disbursement signature page and being like, well, why is this different? Who's this person? So it just needs to be notated. And if they are going to be signing multiple disbursement requests, we can just make the switch pretty quickly. So just let us know.
External sharing is.
Cool. It looks like we're having some issues getting that checklist pasted in the chat. We're going to try to keep at it and get it in there, but we are going to move forward for now. All right. So for a clean request with no issues, review and payment processing typically takes about 3 to 5 business days. That's a typical time frame, not a guarantee, but it gives you a sense of what a normal request looks like. You can also follow the request through its WorksWise statuses. New means the request has been started but not been submitted yet, or that it's been returned for clarification. Submitted means it's waiting for the program rep to review. Reviewed means the program review is complete. And at this point, we hand it off to the finance folks to get that paid. Waiting disbursement entry means the request has moved to finance for payment processing. Waiting warrant date means the payment information has been entered and is waiting for confirmation through the state system. Paid means the payment has been issued, and then reconciled means the payment has been matched and finalized in WorksWise. The best way to stay on that normal path is to catch the common issues before they cause a return. So here's a few common errors. Most times when we return a request, it falls into a few familiar categories. The disbursement signature page doesn't match WorksWise. Proof of payment is missing. An invoice doesn't give us enough detail. The signer is outdated. A request is off ratio, or duplicate documents make the record unclear. None of those automatically mean there's a major project problem. They just mean we have to stop and clarify the record a little bit. So if we do need to return a request, here are some best practices for dealing with that. Right. So if a request is returned, it doesn't mean denied. In most cases, we just need clarification, a corrected document, or a little more support before we can finish that review. The basic process is pretty simple. Just read the return reason, correct the specific issue, then ask your program representative if anything is unclear, and then resubmit. You normally will not need to start over. Just fix the item we identified and then keep the record clean. WorksWise will not allow you to create a new disbursement request on the project if another disbursement request is in either new status or submitted status. So you always want to be cognizant of those statuses. Right. Cool. So if a request is returned, this is the main way that we return a disbursement for any correction or clarification. So this is an email that you'll want to recognize. Sometimes these can get caught in spam, but you'll want to make sure that your IT or your email whitelists this address. That will come from noreply@salesforce.com on behalf of the Ohio Public Works Commission. The subject will tell you the disbursement needs more information. Most importantly, there will be a return note explaining what needs to be corrected. And the program rep will identify themselves along with a date as to when that was sent back. That note is your starting point. So that's going to be right here. The next steps are go into WorksWise, correct the issue, and make sure you resubmit the request once the correction is complete, or you'll reach out to your program representative to get a project official updated. Saving a correction doesn't help if the request is never resubmitted, so you'll want to make sure you go back in and resubmit that once you update it. And then if you have a question about the return, as usual, email your program rep directly. Do not reply to that system email. It is not monitored, so just want to reach out directly. So with that, we'll do one last quick knowledge check before we move on. If a request is returned and the comment is unclear, what should you do? All right, yep. The correct answer is B. Read the return comment, fix the specific issue, and contact your program rep if you need clarification. Don't upload everything again just because the request was returned. No need to start a brand new request. And don't assume the return means the payment's been outright denied. All right, with that, I'll leave you here with the official pages where our resources live. These are the main OPWC resource pages we've referenced today. I recommend keeping them bookmarked. WorksWise training materials, OhioPays information, infrastructure project administration, Clean Ohio administration, and the WorksWise loan training videos. All of those will be posted on our YouTube video or YouTube page. Before we open it up to any questions, here are the 5 core ideas from today. Number 1, prepare before WorksWise. Make sure your officials, vendors, ratio, and documents are ready to go. Make the math easy to follow. The financial details and supporting documents should all tell the same story. Upload clean PDFs under the right submission types. Stay on ratio as much as possible. And of course, always ask early when something unusual comes up. The overall message is pretty simple. Clean requests get paid faster. And we just like you to stay in communication with us as the project develops. And with that, we will open it up for any questions we weren't able to get to during the presentation.
You had one about the mileage reimbursement rate a little bit ago.
Gotcha. I believe that we work off of the state rate. That is 58 cents.
Any other questions or concerns? Anything you'd like us to go back over again?
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Oh, here we got a question. Awesome. Hey, Kathy. Yeah, so if you're a part of the community that needs that information, you can go into the disbursement. I believe you can click printable view, and then it will give you all of the information. And then the documentation is under the files that you can download. No worries, none at all. Just reach out. We can talk after this if you'd like. Just let me know.
Yeah, nobody should ever feel like they're inconveniencing their program rep with your questions. That's part of our main gist of being here, is to assist you with that. So any questions that you have, get a hold of us and we'll be glad to get you squared away there.
I just want to quickly say thank you to everyone who joined. This is fantastic. We were expecting about 150 and we hit almost 300. So thank you for joining us today. We're still practicing and learning these online trainings, and we're trying to do more outreach this year. So really, really glad to have you all. And definitely, if you have any questions after this, just feel free to follow up with us directly.
Yep, and we're dropping the staff directory and the district map in the chat there. If you're not sure who covers your community, it will be right there. The districts are broken up into groups of counties. We have a couple single county districts. But yeah, as usual, if anything unusual comes up, any questions, feel free to reach out. We'll always be available. And we'd like to help work through it quickly and early before we get too far in and it causes any headaches. Yep. Thank you again. We appreciate the work you all do in keeping these projects moving and for your communities and we look forward to working with all of you as we move forward. I believe we can end the recording, Will.